Okay, colleagues and friends and all who've joined us, please just put your system on mute, and could all put on mute. We've got a bit of background noise. We're going to start the session now. So I just want to welcome everyone who's joined from Urban Fest. This is an Urban Fest session. And as I've said before, it's a wonderful festival, a month of events. And so please do go onto the website, urbanfestival.co, go onto the website and look at the program. There's still many events over the rest of the month. What happens in each session is that it begins with the poem by the official poet of the festival, Emma Mable. And it's I think, a very relevant poem to our session. It's called The Unscripted Ones. I will play the clip, I will play the clip, and then Heather will come in immediately to take over the session. So welcome again, and here is the poem. It said there's a problem downloading the audio file. So let's see if I can do it. Or maybe Roland, do you have the clip there?
Yes, I do.
Okay, perhaps you can do it because it's giving me a problem, a download problem.
The unknown says, our confidence is naive, compromised. Stick to the tried and tested. Your passion is aggressive, knowing that we are coming for everything, marching forwards in numbers, in ones and zeros. The past has no leverage on us. The present expected us to stand still, but time ticked our presence, with the future inscribing us into history's foundation, calling us by our names, including the clicks in our names and clicking of our fingers. Once not born with silver spoons in their mouths, are now makers of the spoon and benders thereof, came to this earth with answers clenched in fist, unclenching fist to be the answer. Ours is not a race to come first or be first, but to influence and impact us, energy injectors, conductors of creativity, dancers with the rain, proverbs for our posterity, signaling the speed of ideas, implanting innovation, setting standards in tradition. We are outliers, the avant-garde, belonging to secrets whispered in spaces unseen for fear of our splendor. We are resolutely spewing out stagnation, a slow poison for the norm, perplexing conformity. We're not taking up space only to be muted at the table, not just conduits between what should be and is, not just bodies trading into uncharted public realms, but we are tomorrow's tools, the manifestation of ideals and scripted, leaning on the reassurance of the rising of the sun the next day. Let he without foresight cast the first doubt, whilst we visionaries converge at Urban Festival 2020. Welcome.
Phil, I'm gonna step in here if I may. Heather has asked that I make the introduction to our moderator for the morning, and then we can kick off the session from there. Is that okay? Well, I'm Stephen Hobbs.
Right. Thanks, okay. Stephen. Welcome.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. It's so fantastic to be here. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm Stephen from the Trinity session, Stephen Hobbs, and I'm going to actually kick off immediately by introducing Yasmin Dinath, who I suspect to many in the room needs no introduction. But of course, we've had a long-standing relationship with Yasmin in terms of our public art contracts with the Johannesburg Development Agency. But we've really appealed to Yasmin today to facilitate and moderate the conversation as a mother and an urbanist really interested in these kinds of topics in terms of her own attitudes towards design and transformation in the city in terms of children's rights. So I'm going to hand over to Yasmin now. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Stephen. Is everybody okay with my audio? Can you hear me? Give me a thumbs up. Okay, great. Okay, hi everyone. My name is Yasmin Dinath, and yes, I am a mother primarily. And then I have a side gig called being an urban planner for the city of Joburg. And I'm so delighted that these two roles are coming together today. This is a conversation I have been waiting to have for a very long time. And then, you know, Phil will know that a few years ago, we came up with the idea of looking at mothers' experiences of the city. And what we haven't yet done is listen to children about their city. What we're trying to do is make kids the experts. And I'm so happy that there's such a big turnout because it feels like we're all here for the same reason. We know that our cities have been incredibly tough places for kids, but what's really exciting, and we're going to hear about that today, are all the different initiatives that are happening from the ground up, where practitioners, artists, the creative sector, educators are interested in learning from children. And I think that we quite, as parents even, fall into the trap of thinking we know what's good for them, and we take a maternal and a paternal approach to analyzing kids' experiences of the city, when actually they have all the experience and they can teach us about what they really need the city to do. So I'm happy that we're all here to listen to how kids can inform our practice. So that's it from me. I don't want to talk too much. I think we've got a fantastic program ahead of us. The agenda is super creative with people who have been creative with kids. And I think I'm going to kick off with a fun exercise. And that involves you all getting very creative. So it's time to grab a piece of paper, some colorful pens, pencils, your kids' crayons, you can get hold of them. And on this piece of paper, we'd love you to put down any kind of images that come to mind when you think about how the city sees the child. And you can draw, and you can even make paper crafts if that's what is going to be the most expressive way to do it. And over the next 15 minutes, while you listen to the conversation, keep doodling, keep drawing, and your thoughts we want to see a little bit later in the session. So this is meant to be lots of fun. It's meant to be interactive. It's not you just sitting and listening to people talking. Okay, so get those colors out and off you go. What we want to do while you're doing that is have an introductory presentation from Play Africa. And they're going to be sharing with us all the amazing work they do with children, where they really, and I think they're doing a fantastic job, where they really privilege the children's experience and voice of the city and even, you know, in the country. So it's all about kids having that agency and voice. And Gretchen, can I hand over to you?
Definitely. You're actually going to be hearing from my colleague, Lindiwe Mbuya, and I'm just going to
Awesome.
share the slides. And I
Awesome.
believe I can do that now.
Great.
Um,
Keep drawing, everybody.
all right. All right, so I'm going to hand over to Lindiwe to take it away. Is it my audio or is, let me just stop quickly. I'm assuming she's just having trouble getting from unmuted to get to unmute. Lindiwe? Perhaps we should go with another colleague who's presenting and we can go after them, as to make sure that she's able to get through with technology. I've stopped sharing my screen. So if I can hand over to either Heather or to Stephen for the Mimosa or Trinity session section, and I'll just find out what's happening with the tech.
Okay. Yeah, let's do that. In the meantime, Mimosa, are you ready to kick off?
Yes, Tessa Brown will be speaking on behalf of the Africa Reggio Emilia Alliance and Mimosa introducing us.
Excellent, thanks.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tessa Brown. Thank you. Thanks, Heather. Thanks, Yasmin. I'm really excited to be here today. I'm the Reggio coordinator for the Africa Reggio Emilia Alliance. And yeah, our presentation today is a collaboration between Mimosa School and the Africa Reggio Emilia Alliance. I'll start off by sharing my screen. Okay, can you see that?
Yes,
right.
Thank you.
Okay, so the collaboration between us today has its root in the relationship that has flourished over the years as the education practice at the school has become more and more inspired by the values and principles of the Reggio Emilia approach. Referred to earlier. And Heather will speak to you later, and you'll see more of this in practice. Sorry, there seems to be a lot of background noise. I don't know if there's somebody could just mute that. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you very briefly about the Reggio Emilia approach, first of all, and the Africa Reggio Emilia Alliance, simply because I think there may be some people who are participating who don't know anything about it. And it is, the Reggio Emilia approach is a very creative, participatory, democratic, socio-constructivist approach based on relationships with a strong ecological focus which advocates for children's rights as citizens from birth. And this, together with its emphasis on human potential and community responsibility for learning, makes it a very transformative and generative approach. Now, this is a lot of words that I've been saying, and there isn't time to unpack it and for you to get a better idea just by me talking, but I'm hoping that when you see Heather's presentation later on, that you will get a real sense of this. It has its genesis in the determination and participation of parents in a poverty-stricken, war-ravaged area in Reggio Emilia in Italy, just after World War II. And these parents were determined to build a school for themselves and to provide a different kind of education, a better future for their children. It eventually evolved into the dynamic practice of the municipal schools in Reggio Emilia that is known the world over and as the Reggio Emilia approach. And thousands of people actually attend study groups and various professional development opportunities in Reggio Emilia every year to study the approach itself as it is seen in these schools. The Africa Reggio Emilia Alliance is a member of the Reggio Children International Network, and as such is the official reference point for the Reggio Emilia approach in South Africa. Our vision as area, as we call ourselves, is to promote and advocate for children's rights by enhancing education, particularly early education, through the vehicle of the approach. And we offer various professional learning opportunities on the approach for educators at all levels. So here you'll see another slide showing that. And so there are no entry-level requirements to any of our initiatives. And we have a wide range of participants from early childhood centers right through to some university academics as well. So it's for anybody who's interested. So we run
Sorry, Tessa, just heads up, you've got 1 minute left.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
We have conferences and exhibitions and a lot of events, and we want them to be accessible to all. And just briefly, lastly, a hallmark of the approach, I spoke about the human potential, but this is the belief in children arising from founder Loris Malaguzzi's ideas of the image of the child that we as individuals have that pushes us to behave in certain ways. And in Reggio Emilia, there is a very strongly held belief about the potential of children, which you will see reflected in Heather's presentation shortly. This beautiful photograph of Lula, 2-year-old, gives you an indication of that image. So thank you very much.
Thanks.
To the rest of the presentations today. Over to you, Yasmin.
Thanks so much, Tessa. I think we're running over time a little bit. Let's get into the excitement with Play Africa.
Great. Lindy, her power went out right before she was about to speak. And so we're hoping that she's going to be able to comment here. And if not, then I can share these introductory slides. So Lindiwe, are you able to join us? Even though you don't have power, you've made a plan?
Hi, everyone.
Oh, hi, Lindiwe. Hi.
Hi, my name is Lindiwe and I facilitate planned learning at Play Africa. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, fantastic. Welcome. I'm so happy that you sorted the power issue out. Let's kick off.
Go ahead, Lindy.
I facilitate. Okay, my name is Lindiwe Mabuya and I facilitate planned learning at Play Africa. I'm excited to share our journey to transform public spaces in the city of Johannesburg to support playful spaces for children and families. Play Africa works with partners to catalyze innovation in creative learning, children's rights, parent engagements, and social cohesion. We are disrupting an idea of what a museum is.
Oh, so sorry, but I think we may have to swap over, Gretchen, if your
Sure.
audio and your connection's better. Just time-wise, it's
Okay,
a
sure, that's
pity.
fine. Lindy, I'm sorry
Okay.
to say we're just having trouble with the connection. So let me just share a little bit more about what we're doing. So for us, the city is our children's museum. 5 days a week, we transform the spaces at Constitution Hill into a space for playful learning for children and for families and for schools. But not every child can come to us. So we go to children where they live. We go to them into parks, into street corners, into streets themselves, into rooftops, school halls, and community centers. And throughout all of this, we're really taking the idea of what public spaces can be to create shared and inclusive centers for learning, equitable learning for young children and their families, to support children's development. In the last 4 years, we've created meaningful play experiences for tens of thousands of children. And in fact, more than 25,000 children in Greater Johannesburg have engaged in Play Africa's play experiences that have lasted 3 hours or more. Our play promotes STEM and STEAM learning. It promotes creativity, collaboration, problem solving, critical thinking, and most importantly, it cultivates human connection and healthy child development. Throughout all of this, we really see partners and teachers as important partners in this journey to support children. So we're always really sure that parents and teachers are empowered with global learning approaches that they can take home with them into their homes, into their classrooms, and into their communities. What we're really most excited about is the ways in which we use prototyping to create a very locally appropriate and relevant solution to transforming public spaces around children's learning and children's play. And we operate in many contexts and many different environments, and we're really excited about the replication and scalability of what we have to offer. It's what I'll be talking about later in the program is a little bit about one aspect of our work. And we're really just excited to be here with our colleagues and our community that is really looking at ways to engage children as active participants in our city. So thank you so much from Play Africa.
Thanks, Gretchen and Lindiwe. Sorry about your connection. Let's go on to the Trinity session. No strangers.
Okay, so we turn 20 next year, which we're very excited about, Marcus and myself. We started as an artist collective in 2000, 2001, and collectivity for us seemed like an essential response to an art world infrastructure that appeared to have collapsed somewhat post-apartheid, specifically museums and galleries perhaps not performing to the commercial needs of artists, but also a kind of elitism that grew up around those spaces that I think really was not serving the purpose of a greater public. And we were really interested in a city undergoing radical transformation, and over time became very interested in dialogues with the city of Johannesburg and starting to look at the role that art could play in public space. I suppose we're all very familiar now with the plethora of works commissioned by the city of Johannesburg and the Department of Arts, Culture and Heritage, and how our city has evolved and changed in terms of identifying with artistic expression and cultural expression through pieces of permanent, temporary and performative works. We've done many commissions with the city, and the one I want to reflect on today that leads to our collaboration that Tammy will be sharing on with Play Africa a little bit later is we were appointed 4 years ago as curator coordinator for all creative placemaking through art along the transit-oriented development corridors. So that is basically from Orlando, New Canada Road, Empire, Perth, and into Louis Botha Avenue, where the city of Joburg has an extensive stretch of new build projects, both urban upgrades and new facilities in Noordgesig, Brixton, Turfentine, Orange Grove, and so on. And of course, as we follow the Rea Vaya stations that are slowly coming online, each of those is complemented by a piece of work. And I think that, Tammy, if you can just go to the next slide, and a little too fast. So just pause the slide for 1 second. Go back. Just hold the slide. Just hold the slide for a moment, so everyone can just take in the composition. And then let's go back one more.
There we go.
Very good. Then we go to the first one. So what I've extracted from in terms of these 3 slides is basically really exciting opportunities, sort of experimental design processes done in a kind of co-authorship participatory process with various schools, communities, localized groups to each of these development areas, exploring possibilities for, in this slide, say to the left-hand side, what Waverley Girls High girls might experience in terms of the threat of traversing the major intersection on Louis Botha at the Balfour Park Centre, and trying to understand child-centric safety, but and ways in which we can activate the space with techniques around passive surveillance and the like. And to the right-hand side, an image that was an experiment with the Northview High School kids, looking at ways in which we could prototype urban furniture that was more adaptive to a kind of situation they find themselves struggling with when they come out of school, waiting for taxis or for someone to pick them up. There's nowhere to sit, there's nowhere to hang their bags, and they tend to land up on the rooftop of Balfour Park Shopping Centre. If we go to the next slide very quickly, it's really about looking, in this case, working with very young kids from a nearby creche, and ways in which their image making could be instrumental in uplifting and visualizing and integrating with the urban design for a linear park that was conceived for Rotunda Park in Turfentine. And if we go to the last one, I think this is Noordgesik's biker group, who are designers of their own bicycles, and trying to understand how working through workshop design processes and with their particular skills as sculptors, if you will, inspired by bikes, how can we start looking at urban furniture in a different way and complement that with visual backdrop that is stimulating and place or site centric. So I'm going to leave it at there, and when Tammy brings us back on board for the Q&A session, sorry Yasmin, I'm jumping ahead, I'll create a bridge for that, for those visuals.
Excellent. Okay, so that's some really exciting work, some fantastic ideas around kids. I'm not going to summarize, but what I do want you to do, everybody, is show us what you've done. So if everybody can please switch on their videos and hold up your creations all at the same time. I'm just going to wait a little bit for other people to turn on their videos. Please, please show us what you've done.
And Yasmin, may I interject while everybody's popping up their pictures, what we neglected to mention in the beginning. So with your introduction to this request for audience responsiveness, we also have happening in the background, Pauline Borton, busy working on her own particular visualization, which will be a sort of visual conceptual distillation of today's proceedings. I think she's just come online there, so you can see Pauline's desk as she's making. And as the presentations unfold, she will share with us towards the end of the session. So forgive us, Pauline, for not introducing you earlier. My fault, yes.
Sorry, but that would have been a wonderful surprise, even to pop in at the end. Our secret weapon is Pauline.
No, exactly.
Okay, it was doing amazing work quietly. Okay, everybody,
bring it closer to you.
Come on, much closer. Try and eliminate your background so that the drawing or the that is lovely. So we want to take a few screenshots, so give us a chance. So you might need to hold it up for a while. Oh, very interesting. Everybody else? Come on, we've got too many videos off, cameras off. Come on, people. This is fun. This is not something you get to do every day. Great. Okay, if you haven't done your homework, you can do it in 2 minutes now. We really want to see it. Leandri, you can show us your newborn baby, please. Leandri just posted in the chat that she can't show us her drawing because she's sitting with a newborn. And I can't think of anything more appropriate for a visual. Okay, I think we're going to be short on time. Pauline, Stephen, Tammy, Gretchen, you're all happy. Tessa, can we move on? I don't see any more people. That's okay. All right, have we got some screenshots?
Yeah.
Great. Okay. So let's move on to the other creative bit of this agenda, and let's move on to the interviews. We are going to have people interviewing each other, so you get to know a lot more about the role of children as citizens and the kind of work people are doing. So I'm going to hand over to, let's have the Trinity session interviewed by Mimosa. Are we ready? I can't wait to hear how these interviews are going to throw up a whole lot of new ideas and maybe even validate the kinds of things we've been talking about recently. Okay, are we ready, Mimosa?
Yes, we are ready. My name is Otandi Wesekhabani, and
Okay.
I work at Mimosa Auckland Park, and I will be interviewing the Trinity session. Okay, Stephen and Tammy, from your introduction to the work that you're doing, which is quite incredible for young children, the recreation space was sort of a partnership between yourselves and other key organizations. Could you tell us a bit more about what your aims were? What did you have in mind when this was incepted, and who was involved?
Thanks, Otundiwe. Central to the practice of the Art My Josie program, the placemaking program with the City of Joburg and JDA, is to work in a very kind of locality-centric way, and over time identify partnerships that transcend just artistic communities, but residents, stakeholders, and the like, whose voices are essential to understanding how to drive a program of creativity that manifests in various visual outcomes, such that it is the voice of that community, and we are the facilitators and the co-designers of that process, but at a technical level. And we have been resident at the Orchards Project and Spark Gallery for over 4 years now. A fantastic partnership in and of itself, because the space is such an incredible resource in terms of proximity to one of the upgrade areas, Patterson Park, but also the fact that the opportunity to make exhibitions inside Spark Gallery and work in the Tipper space and really produce works for many of our sites across our project geography has been a really, really amazing dialogue with Roger Chadwick and his team. And as these relationships evolve, and I think a time-based aspect to the work is really important. If you are staying present in communities on an ongoing daily basis, year in and year out and year in, you start to understand and build relationships in much more sophisticated ways, I think. And Roger and the board approached the Trinity session 2 years ago with some money available to them from an application to the National Lottery. And at that time, we had been very inspired by work we had been doing with school kids, local creches and so forth in the Orange Grove, Patterson Park area. And very mindful of Play Africa's work in the business of decentralizing the conventional museum, or the conventional architecture of a museum with a front door and volumes that might intimidate us. We were starting to kind of co-imagine ways of thinking about ways in which children can soften the built environment. And through working closely with Play Africa, with Roger and his team, being guided by the way in which they understand the sort of hard and soft spaces in the road reserve surrounding the site, the pain points, if you will, and where there's opportunity for development. We identified a specific piece of ground, if you will, but this was part of a process that I'm going to hand over to Tammy to reflect on deeper as the questions unfold. So I'll leave it at that for the moment.
Thank you so much, Stephen. I mean, you're talking about these processes and looking at art, not just as an exclusive space, a centralized space, and you're trying to, show and work with voices of communities involved in your contextualizing your work. Could you perhaps take us through that? Because it's really interesting work about the presences of these relationships. Could you tell us a bit more about the workshopping processes, some of the methods that you use to connect these people and these ideas, engage us in your findings and how this has engaged your conceptual process?
Cool. So maybe I'll pick up here and I'll talk a bit about the recreation space workshopping process. So it was a 2-part workshop process. Each was held over 3 consecutive days for about 2 hours after school. And the first workshop we did, which you can see some pictures of here, it was really focused around site orientation. So we took the children on a site inspection of Orchids Project and the surrounding area, and we gave them each these clipboards to take down their notes. But before we did that, we did a little dress-up exercise where each child had to dress up as their dream career. And we thought that this was a good icebreaker exercise because it helped children get into that imaginary mindset, and it helped them think about the future and their place in the future. So as I mentioned, we did a site inspection of the area, and then we returned back to the Orchids Project to do a child-friendly SWOT analysis to assess the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and challenges. And you can see in the top right picture, we had little color-coded stickers where the children could indicate good sites, bad sites, sites that can be fixed, sites that can't be fixed. And obviously, through the help of the facilitators from Play Africa and some of our facilitators from Orange Farm, they helped the children think through these thoughts and place them specifically on the map. We then did a model making exercise, which you can see there on the bottom right. So we did this model making exercise so that the children were encouraged to think back on specific sites that they had visited during the site inspection, and then they built models in response to what they would like to see in these sites. So some of them were more specific, saying they want a bridge. Others were more imaginative, saying they want a jungle gym or a house for their pet dinosaur, or some of them got quite imaginative. It was very fun. And this model making exercise was very specific because it was a tool to help the children visualize the space, and these models that they made actually later influenced the props that we built for the performance. So that was everything we did in workshop 1, and then we did the second workshop a week or so later, and this was focused around refining the script for the performance and choosing characters and all of that sort of stuff. But we started this process with a voting process, a democratic voting system, because this workshop was at the same time that the national elections were happening. So we thought this was a very unique opportunity to demonstrate to children what a democratic voting system looks like and the role that they could take as urban citizens and how their voice can be heard through this process. So we voted on things like, should the play be a comedy or an action movie? Should these 2 characters be best friends or enemies? That sort of stuff. And then the children got to come up with their own characters. You can see here in the bottom left, we have a lion with wings. That's the flying lion. We had some pink fluffy sheep. We had a kudu who ran the spaza shop. It was a very imaginative script. It was great. And yeah, then the remaining workshops were just spent on refining the script, learning lines, going over that sort of thing. Yeah.
That is quite enlightening. I mean, I'm hearing that you work with children as active participants, you work with children's imaginations, you work with children's experiences for them to come up with these plays. And I see a very big part of children as democratic citizens. Following this very participatory process with these young children, how did your findings influence sort of the final outcome of their performance? Can you please take us through that?
Okay, so as I mentioned briefly earlier, at the first workshop, we did that model making exercise. And then those models then influenced the props that we made for the final performance. So you can see here some of our architects' drawings. We've got a rainbow bridge, we've got a castle built with marshmallow walls and Toblerone for the spikes along the top. You can kind of see the spaza shop there in the bottom left. That's where the kudu runs the shop. So yeah, the children's drawings were upcycled and turned into the props themselves. But in terms of the location for the performance, you can see we set it up outside the Spark Gallery here, and we chose this site specifically, taking into consideration the children's site analysis, conversations with Play Africa and the Orchards Project. And we decided on this location specifically because it was quite a hard exterior, and we felt that it could do with some children's imagination, some softening up a bit. But furthermore, it has these big double doors, you can see it on the top left, that open into an exhibition space. So the audience viewed the performance outside, and then they got to go in through these big doors to see the exhibition, which we set up with the children's drawings and the models. And yeah, then they got some insight into the workshop process that led up to the performance.
Amazing, amazing work. I mean, I hear that your work was geared or intended towards sort of children having a final performance that they would have designed, curated, and performed. Of course, that is based on the requirements of perhaps the funding that you had. But could you tell us, Temi, then, what other form could your initial vision of your work take? What I mean is, what alternative outcome do you think this type of work, of project work, could produce?
Okay. We originally wanted to build a set of more permanent props that could be kept in the Spark Gallery and perhaps brought up and upcycled for various events that we would have. And these sets would sort of dress the space and welcome visitors as they would come in for the events. We also wanted to further our relationships with Orange Farm a bit further. I think Stephen mentioned in the beginning, some of our workshops involved children from Orange Farm, and we were hoping to solidify that relationship a bit and extend our networks further than just the Orchards Project and the immediate vicinity. But furthermore, for us, this was a very interesting case study because this project and the methods that we used could be used as a prototype for seeing how urban spaces are seen through the eyes of children. So this is just one of the many possible forms that child-led design could take. And based on this method, you could make recommendations for further projects and further prototyping designs.
Could I quickly add something to that, please? I think one of the key things that we neglected to mention at the beginning was that in our engagement with Play Africa, one of the things that became very clear to us was that their target group, if you will, is particularly under 10s, or at least that was certainly the process and experience that we went, or that guided our collaborative engagement with young children in and around the area of Patterson Park and Orange Grove, and of course some of the kids that we've worked with over the years through our networks in Orange Farm. And I think that being guided by context and by partners who have specific agendas as well in terms of thinking and making and designing, it was a very important trajectory for, one, the arrival at a performance piece as a mode of expression and a mode of design and a mode of kind of containing an idea, a memory of place and site, but also a catalyst for storytelling as a design-making process for the young participants themselves. And ultimately, and it also really comes down to a funding issue. We had enough money within the context of what was provided us to be able to prototype at this level, but ultimately this is this isn't, the next trajectory is potentially to work somewhere between the temporary and the permanent, or the temporary, the mobile, and the semi-permanent. I thought I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Trinity Session. Very enlightening conversation there. Yasmin, I'll hand back to you.
Thanks so much. I love the excitement, the energy, even of the questions. Thank you, Tandiwe. Thanks, Trinity Session. Yes, let's move on to the next one, and that is Trinity Session interviewing Play Africa.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Gretchen.
Hi, Stephen.
Hey, Gretchen.
Cool. Should we just dive straight into it then?
Let's do that.
Cool. Gretchen, can you tell us a bit about how Play Africa facilitates play to help create active urban citizens?
Absolutely, I can do that. So Play Africa, as everybody who's worked with us will know, is deeply rooted in the values of the Constitution. And we believe that children have the right to participate fully in our democratic society, and they have these rights as full citizens from the moment they're born. And we also know that children have many rights enshrined in the Constitution and in many global frameworks, but the reality is that children's rights remain routinely violated and their needs are oftentimes unmet, especially when talking about issues around the built environment in our cities. So what we do is what we're going to talk about today is a little bit about how we use play and role play to amplify children's voices and to capture and to harness their voices in the way in which they want to make comments about their lives, especially how they feel about their neighborhoods and shared public spaces. So over the last 7 years, we've developed this methodology of co-creating with children and using children and participatory design to design our programs and our exhibits and our installations across the city. But this methodology really helps think about ways to make their children's voices heard. So our Children's Voices program specifically helps strengthen children's rights. It helps amplify democratic processes and the rule of law and how to make your voice heard in a democratic society. And so we create experiences like this, role play experiences that take children through a process of helping them understand that their voice can be something more than just simply the sound that comes out of their throat, but it is actually about ways to make their feelings and their opinions heard in different ways. So in here we have children participating in some peaceful protests or peaceful assemblies and dialogues around their rights. We introduce children to the concept of how they can make their voices heard in a courtroom. And we oftentimes allow the children to define what the court case will be. So we've had children decide to create court experiences through role play around corporal punishment in schools, or the lack of cleanliness in their streets, or the need for textbooks. And what we see in this work is the values of human dignity and freedom and equity coming through in the voices of children through their role play. Just to give some context, we've run this program, which is again is a 3-hour program, a kind of facilitated play-based program with more than 3,000 children alone just in this program in the greater Johannesburg area. And that speaks to the scale in which we operate, which is involving tens of thousands of children since we started our work, and 25,000 of those are children who've engaged in very memorable and meaningful experiences over time through play. Our program also introduces children to the concept of how they can make their voices heard through democratic processes like elections. And so children are registered to vote. They use their own ID cards to check their names against a register. They get their thumbs they get a marker on their thumbs to let them know that they've gotten their ballot. They go to the ballot booth and cast their ballots. And these are things on anything that can be silly, it can be serious. It really is child-led in how we do this process. But one of the things that we find really memorable about this is how children say that this experience has really changed their perception of what democracy is and what voting can be. And it also, we found one of the surprising things that came out of this is how many educators and parents who participated in these experiences with children oftentimes expressed that they'd never before voted. And so when we would ask, does this remind you of the first time you went to go vote? A lot of adults also often said that they had never gone through this process themselves and they felt more empowered to go vote in future elections. One of the things that we did find is that children, broadly speaking, felt that they really were, at least at the close of our experience, expressed a lot of enthusiasm about voting when it comes to a real election process. We find that children love the process of counting the ballots. You can see in the lower left, our results board demonstrates the election on a particular day was their favorite color. So you can see these are not necessarily always the issues that they're commenting on. But for children to see their own was broadly very exciting for us to witness, because we could see that children could see how their contribution contributed to the final results. One of the things that I think really is important about this is just how much we found that children have taken to this kind of play, and to be invited to make their voices heard has been very special. We've designed this program really in line with global research around how to encourage children to become active citizens in their society. And this has become featured in a lot of global platforms about the work that we're doing here in Johannesburg. And this work is something that we're doing, as you can see in the lower left, is at Hope School, which is based here in Johannesburg. On the right-hand side is at Constitution Hill. We can bring this methodology to any location in public spaces. So we've erected our voting booths on street corners. We've erected them in community centers, at festivals. And the reality is that we're trying to demonstrate that it doesn't take a hard and fast infrastructure to do installations like this that promote play and play-based learning to really promote children's sense of themselves as active participants in a democratic society. And we find that one of the reasons why we want to do this is because research shows that the earlier we engage children in these kinds of conversations, the more ready they are to express how they feel about their own rights, but also to speak out when they see other people's rights being violated. So we see that this is not just simply a fun and nice to have for the individual who's participating in it, but that it lends itself to thinking about how can I be a more empathetic and caring member of society, and understand that the rights of children are shared by all of us. This work is really rooted in our learning framework, which I won't get into in this conversation, as well as our theory of change, and backed up with a lot of monitoring and evaluation. And I can get into this at a greater length, but truly this kind of work that we're doing around participatory capturing children's voices is very much deeply rooted in our vision of the society that we're creating for children. Thank you.
Wow, thank you. That was so insightful. Maybe you can tell us a bit more about how Play Africa uses the principles of children's participation to co-create the museum in the city.
Sure, I'm happy to. So again, since when we have this premise that children are full citizens of our cities, that we know then that we need to create platforms to capture their voices about how they feel and how they experience our cities. And I think this is something that's very different than a lot of children's museums that are operating globally. And it's where we tend to be, because we see the city as our museum, we tend to overlap a lot with creative placemaking initiatives around the world, particularly those that involve young children, ages 10 and under. So our methodology, which you could see as well in the Recreation Space initiative, as you know, is really about surfacing children's experiences using a lot of playful methodologies. And some of the methodologies we use include really harnessing, using design thinking and human-centered design to go through a practice of surfacing how children feel, or how they imagine other children feeling, or how they've seen other children feeling in the cities. So I share this one because you can see on the left-hand side, in one of our engagements in Bertram's, we had a lot of language associated with how children feel themselves, or how they can imagine other children that they know, their siblings, their friends, their cousins, how they think that those children are feeling in their neighborhoods. And we use a lot of play-based approaches to think about how can we help amplify those feelings, but then also give children the sense that they can come up with ideas to help counter some of these feelings. So we use an approach through design thinking to tell children we're going to give them some schools and skills and tools to do ideation, to do prototyping, and then to really develop the skills that are needed if you want to be an inventor or an innovator. And the concept that we use in this playful methodology is that every child can be an inventor and an innovator, and that we can give them and we can transfer certain skills in doing so. So this has been really a powerful experience and methodology that we can recreate and have recreated in different parts around our city. And it's very useful, I think, in terms of the conversations we're having about children in the built environment, because it helps really use at a child appropriate level for younger children some of the most important things that we're finding that they identify as their needs in the community. We've used that same kind of thinking to design some of our installations that exist both at Constitution Hill, but that also exist in public spaces when we bring them out. And we do a lot of modular installations. This is from our Bridges of Peace exhibit and program, which is about bringing together children to address issues of xenophobia in Johannesburg at a schools level, in a community level, and invites children to basically deeply rooted in empathy to connect with one another through play. And to surface conversations at a child appropriate level about xenophobia and related violence. It's been a really powerful and strong program with, again, at this program alone, I think we've worked 1,200 children in a 3-hour program.
Cool, thank you. And now the last question. I can't believe we've gone almost a full hour without mentioning Corona, but
yeah.
How has COVID-19 and physical distancing impacted children as urban citizens?
Well, I think it's been said earlier in the conversation in this work, I mean, in the earlier this morning, that really coronavirus and COVID-19 has really laid bare the inequalities of our society. And I think we all of us on this call are very acutely aware of the inequalities with inequalities. And I think this has really surfaced and made very clear our need for shared public spaces that are green, healthy, and support children's healthy development. So some of the things that we've been doing and that we found in our work is that like many people, the parents of the families that we work with on a day-to-day basis have been at home. They have felt the same stresses that all parents have felt around looking for meaningful activities for their children to engage with, trying to keep them busy, oftentimes in very small urban spaces with very little green or outdoor space. And so as part of our process, you can see back in May, this invitation on the left is from May, when we hosted a virtual kids town hall with children that we had such a positive response. We had children and families signing up from across South Africa and had multiple families from Cape Town to Durban to KZN, rural KZN to rural Limpopo. Everyone wanted to be part of this conversation about how they wanted as children to imagine cities changing in a post-COVID world. What you find is not necessarily too surprising. A lot of children identified issues around safety and security, a lot of issues around green spaces, a lot of information around equipment designed for children's healthy play, and finally issues around sanitation and hygiene. And I think all four of those are perhaps what you'd imagine, but they really added to the evidence and data that we are capturing from children to understand what they really believe is needed when we think about the built environment in post-COVID era. We're also doing a lot of work to engage directly with families in this time who don't have a lot of shared spaces. We are not able to solve these challenges for children across the city, considering our limitations of capacity. But the truth is we're really trying to bring the methodologies and the approaches that we have to families at home. So we've run 9 new programs since forced us to lock down and close our day-to-day operations at Constitution Hill. And those programs really are about empowering and equipping families and educators to create playful environments, whether it's in their own home or in the corridors of their flats or in their courtyards of their flat environments, or on street corners or in local parks? How can we help and empower and equip families and educators to create small spaces that are dedicated to children's play, and doing so in a way that's safe and healthy and promotes equity in our city? And then finally, I think
so yeah, is this the last
okay, this is the last slide.
question?
The last slide
Because
now
we're really running out of time. Okay.
is useful for future conversations and something that we relate our work back to is models like the urban play framework, which really look at the ways in which we can think about children and play in our cities. And we can speak to slides like this or models like this at a greater depth. But thank you very much. That's all I've got from my side. Thanks for the questions.
Thank you.
Fantastic. And I think we all want to know more. It's a pity that we're running out of time. Can we move to the third interview? I love how this is rolling out. Play Africa. It's time for you to interview Mimosa area.
Thanks, Heather. I'll wait for your slides to come up and then we'll kick into the interview. But as always, it's so great to be working with partners like you that we've done so much work with before, and we share such a passion about creative responses to children. And so it's great to be working with Mimosa again.
Thank you so much, Anne. We're just waiting for this to open, but there we go. Anne, can you see?
It's still blank.
Coming up.
There we go. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, I have to sort that out. Okay.
Heather, so
Thanks,
maybe,
Anne.
we heard a bit about Area and the Reggio Emilia Alliance, but maybe you can tell us, how does Mimosa see children as urban citizens? We'd love to hear.
Thank you. So I think as Phil started this morning, he spoke about the fact that a citizen is something that you simply are. And it's your right, because you live in a place and you're born in a place. And so children are born citizens, and it's not something they'll become. Even though, so in practice, this means that children can and should exercise their citizenship from a young age. We know that children are fascinated by what they see and hear, and they're always asking questions. If you're in the car with a child, why must we stop at robots? Why are petrol attendants black? Who plants the flowers on the pavement? Why do some people sleep on the streets? So children are always asking questions. They want to know and they want to understand. And this concern for society is what we see as being at the core of citizenship. Even though we say that children are citizens, it doesn't mean that they know what it means, what their rights and responsibilities are, or how they can exercise their agency at school or at home or on the streets. So we believe that children learn to be good citizens through the daily practice of negotiation, problem solving, decision making. So at school, we try to create opportunities for children to practice these skills.
Heather, that's so important and so interesting. What are the ways to do this?
So the first thing we would do is in our morning meetings, every morning we meet to greet and prepare for the day. Children share their own plans for the day, so they are in charge of their own long-term projects. Maybe there's a small group painting the jungle gym, or another group that is working on their fairy city. So children will describe what they're going to do for the day, or they also have a chance to negotiate that if they don't feel like doing it and to justify different decisions. So they have this opportunity to express their needs, and they can make a different plan. And then also in these meetings or in other meetings, when problems arise, like too much noise in the classroom or children not looking after their equipment, we will discuss it as a group. And however the children decide to resolve this problem is what we do. So we listen to the children's voices. And even if we think that as adults it's not going to work out, last year the group I had decided to do a chore chart And they decided one group must clean the classroom for a whole week. Well, I think by Wednesday, that group had it, you know? And they decided they had not made a good decision. So they protested, and the children met again and decided, okay, they'll make it a daily chart. But we have to respect children. If we ask them for their opinions, and if we give them space to make decisions, we have to respect those decisions. And the other thing is that we have to give children time and space without adult interference to work together and to negotiate and fight and compromise. Otherwise, how will they learn to be a team? You know, how will they learn to take perspective or to deal with disappointment? So that's really democracy in action. If you look at this picture there, this group of children were building a castle for the princess with a moat and crocodiles, and the prince was going to come, you know, very stereotyped. But there were as many plans for making the set as there were children. And there was a lot of jockeying for positions. Who's going to be the prince? Who's going to be the princess? Who's going to be the crocodile? And of course, children couldn't necessarily have the positions they wanted to be. So somebody had to be the dragon, you know. So they have to learn to deal with disappointment. And I think this is just like we have to deal as adults every day. We have to know how to work in teams. We have to deal with our own disappointments when our ideas aren't favored. So children are learning the skills of citizenship if we give them time and space to do that.
I mean, Heather, it sounds like they're amazing things that they're busy learning in your school grounds, and what they're learning about their own agency. Could you tell me, how do you understand children's agency?
And I think the first thing is that you have to believe in children's agency. You actually have to believe that children are competent and that they can engage with complex ideas. And from now on, I'm going to tell you a story about a group of children and their response to a very complex question. I was reading the story of the Lorax to a group of 4-year-olds. And one of the children began weeping, struck by the enormity of the problem. And he echoed the words of the Lorax: unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. And the children were so concerned by this problem of the Lorax and how they could help within the story to start with, this problem of planting trees and of devastation. So the children shared all they knew about trees, the job of trees to make oxygen, that trees give home to animals, they provide shade and beauty. And what could they do to solve this problem? They would need to plant more trees, obviously. But where could they plant and what could they plant? So they decided that we would need to look in our own garden to see what was growing there, to look at the trees, to get to know the trees better. So the first thing they did was to map trees and the flowers in the garden. And as they were doing that, they really noticed everything that was in the garden, through searching and making notes and creating hypotheses. The children came up with ideas of how we could interact differently with our environment, that we might understand ourselves and our environments better. But it was still clear that we needed to find out more about trees. And how should we do this? So the children came up with an idea that was really very unusual in adults' eyes. And they decided that we need to ask the trees for answers. And so we can see the view of another from the tree. And they are also trying to take perspective and to show empathy, all of which are very critical skills for citizenship. Then they also decided that if you want to, well, they wondered how the tree would answer us. And they said, if you want to get to know somebody, what do? You go and spend time with them. You listen to them. and you sit with them. So they suggested we go out and we sit with the trees and we wait to see if the trees have an answer for us.
How lovely.
And on the research project went, with as many questions to answer as the children could come up with. And by now they had realized that the Lorax's problem is our problem too. So what they were coming up with was an understanding that trees are not alone in providing food and oxygen, that all plants are important. And you can see the children doing research with their magnifying glasses, their clipboards. And if all plants are
Ladies,
important,
sorry, Heather, sorry, I just want to remind us about time. Do we have much longer?
no, we're nearly done. Okay.
This is fantastic, and I'm sorry, but we just have
Okay.
to hurry
Sure.
a little. Thanks.
If all plants are important, then we need to start planting. So children are beginning to see a relationship between their actions and behaviors and the impact that this has on the world. And they're also becoming aware of their own agency in the situation. So the most, sorry, Anne, yeah.
I mean, I'm wondering in what ways the work you do makes visible the citizenship of children, and then perhaps a last question about what other organizations could learn from that, if you can answer them in the time you've got left.
I'll be very quick. So one of the parents introduced us to spekboom, and while we were doing a short explanation of its properties of carbon sequestration, one of the children exploded and said, but this means it's a hero plant. We should plant it all over South Africa so everyone will know. So the children really wanted to spread this message and launch this idea that everybody should be planting spekboom. So you see, it inspired the whole school. The children planted cuttings and they told us what messages needed to go on the cuttings. They decided that we would hand these out to passers-by on the street. This time the whole school was inspired, the children and teachers and parents. So everybody was busy composting, exploring the streets, and starting to understand how interwoven the world is, and how much we depend on those around us, human, non-human, and more than human, to survive. So from all of these connections, we decided to have a joyful plant protest, timed to coincide with the global climate strike in September last year. So there are the parents and children and teachers on the street, heading off for outside the SABC with their posters that they've made, with posters their parents have made. But the most important thing was that they were going to hand out spekboom to all the people they encountered on the way and tell them how important it was that they should plant the spekboom in their gardens and trees as well. And I think what it also started was a new era at Mimosa of looking at sustainability in the school. You know, how do we waste less? How do we reuse? And all of this coming from that original research question of the children's. And I suppose what I would say to other people is, you know, looking at Play Africa, looking at the Trinity session, that it's really that we should believe that children can think deeply and that they have amazing theories about how their cities work and very creative ideas about how their cities could work better. And this project showed us that if we work together with children and provide them with research tools that make sense to them, they will always come up with ideas to solve problems, local and global. And then the way that Trinity Sessions and Play Africa work, you can see how much overlap there is if we want to work with children. That's using participatory methodologies, using tools, different tools like photography and mapping and design for exploring and for research. And then that we need to also be making children's thinking visible to others. So I suppose I'd conclude by saying believe in children and in the power of their voices and their capacity to lead us to new knowledge and new ways of knowing, and not necessarily the other way around. Thanks, Anne.
Wonderful. Thank you, Heather. Back to you, Yasmin.
Thank you so much. There's so much to reflect on, and this is rich with information, with ideas, with the amazing work that people are doing. I want to now open up to the audience. And this is your turn to join the conversation after the interviews. And the question really is, how could the city see the child? You don't have to stick to that particular question. You can reflect on everything you've heard so far, talk about what's really popped up for you. And yeah, let's keep it friendly and informal. I'm not sure, is there a way to show hands? You could just pop your name into the chat if you're quick, and then I can pick up the sequence from there. So I don't think there's a way to pop up your hand. Can somebody tell me, because I'm used to MS Teams. Alex, okay, great. Alex wants to kick off. You can briefly just say who you are, but we are quite short on time. So off you go.
Hi, Yasmin. I am an urban studies scholar and also a theatre maker, and I've done some work with children, and I was involved with Mimosa last year on their Open Streets project. So my question is a big one, and maybe a little naive, but I'm so struck at the depth of the work that all three organizations are doing and the amount of reach you're getting with children. But I also feel this feeling of like, there are so many children in South Africa, and I'm curious about ideas on how to scale this like dense quality work with kids so that it's more pervasive. Okay, I'm going to mute and take my video off.
I can
Thanks,
answer from a Play Africa perspective. I think there are so many different pathways to scales from Play Africa's approach. One is that we have created a curriculum for educators in grades R through grade 3, which can be adapted for older grades, but we focused on grades R through grade 3 to use design thinking for children to address issues, to surface using empathy, and then ideation and prototyping using really everyday materials for solutions they'd like to create for their environment. So that is a methodology and curriculum that's for educators, and we would see opportunities to train and equip educators to run this process in their own environment to be one simple way that we could reach more children. But I think also there's something that's really to be said for the ways in which we can partner with if we believe that children deserve and have the right to interventions that are designed for them in the built environment, we would love to meet with the partners in the built environment well beyond simply city officials, planners, and developers, but construction companies, roads companies. We believe that we have solutions that can help them create interventions for children and for families that can drive playful learning, playful, healthy development, and children's needs in the built environment. And we believe that we're the kinds of, amongst Mimosa, Trinity Session, Play Africa, you've got practice here in this country that is very globally recognized for its pioneering work. And we have the ability to scale that with the right partners to be able to demonstrate their consideration for children's needs with more sustainable and long-term solutions in the built environment. So those are my two initial thoughts from my side.
Excellent. Who's next with a question or comment? Please also remember that our secret weapon is Pauline and her creative work that's going on in the background quietly. So I do want to create some time for her to share that, and you can get a sneak peek just by looking at her video that's on through her camera. Anybody else quickly who wants to make a point?
Yasmin, can I just answer about Mimosa? I mean, I think
very quickly, yeah.
Very quickly. Just to say that, I mean, it's actually the pedagogy and the methodology, and that this is shared amongst many schools in South Africa through the Africa Reggio Emilia Alliance. So it is about changing the image of child, and that this is happening in ECD centres across the country.
Okay, excellent. Who else wants to say something quickly?
Hi, can I say something?
Hi, Vika.
Hi, I heard the question. I just wanted to answer the question that asks, how does the city see the children? Am I correct?
Yes, please.
Oh, all right. Somehow I was creating a drawing here. A term just appeared in my head. I'm going to try to explain as much as I can. But currently, the city somehow sees the children as just mushrooms. I'm going to explain it briefly. I'm talking from the basis that I work and stay in Johannesburg. Johannesburg is no longer a place to live. Most of the people that are in the city right now, they are just transiting. They come, use it for whatever they came for, get back into their cars, their taxis, and go back to where they come from. So literally, they really do not really pay attention and care to how the city becomes for the child. There's a lot of things that are so unfriendly to the child. I'm going to tell you just one. We work with schools in the eastern side of Johannesburg. For us to get grade 7 to our center, we have to make sure there's a transport system. Otherwise, they will never reach the city. They will never reach the center. Safety crossing the streets, the driving of the people in the street, and it's not just taxi drivers, normal drivers who are driving their private cars. It's just so unfriendly to children, which gives me the idea that we just tend to see children just as mushrooms who are just popping by. Well, there are entities, organizations, and those particular formations who are working to make sure that the city center is very child friendly. For example, you can just name one park in the whole of Johannesburg City that is child friendly. I would pay you my last penny. So the city is not really friendly to the development of the child. Even where we are right now, I've been talking to the city for a long time for us to just have a hump just in front of where we are, because there's a lot of traffic. There's a racing of cars that comes from the car dealerships that are around the corner when they test their cars. It's very difficult to get anyone to listen. So when you begin to see the children and how the whole of the city, because the city is not just buildings, it's not just corporate in the city, it's also the people who use the city for either work, transit, or whatever, business or whatever, is kind of crazy and critical that we change that narrative.
Vika, 100% agree with you, and also please feel free to make contact with me. I just want to understand your particular challenge. Wearing my other hat. It's a pity that we don't have much time. The content was so rich and exciting that I didn't want to cut that out. I have invited people to put questions and comments in the chat, but can we cross over to Pauline, please? We're going to be running out of time. Pauline, you ready for us? You ready to wow us? This is going to be an awesome way to end the session because it's just colorful and it's creative and it's.
Can you guys see it nicely, Yasmin?
You're gonna need to. Can everybody see that? I think you have to pin right click and pin the video. Everybody, so that it's much bigger.
Or go to speaker view. Use speaker view.
Oh, okay. Well, let's do that.
So I wrote notes as I went along, and everything belongs to a certain sort of section of the discussion that we were having. But really, I started with a foundation, which started with the poem. There were some interesting phrases that came out of there that I sort of caught onto. Then I've got a representation of Mimosa here with the ecology, Play Africa's museum here in the middle, which represents some kind of social cohesion. The Trinity session here, I've got these kind of creative lollipop things, and that's got to do with conversations with the city and networking. And then the rest of it formed around that. So all these networks created roots and branches out these amazing sort of ideas that came out through the conversation. I latched onto key words. So things like a locality center, imagination is key. storytelling influences design, amplifying voices. And then all of Heather's amazing sort of terminology sits over here, which leads us to the green spaces and the trees, which was a problem-solving exercise. And then the intention at the end of it is that it's created almost this new playground, this new way of maybe listening to kids. And that starts with listening to their voices, amplifying their voices, and it kind of travels through, leading us back to the networks that need to be doing just that. And that's it.
Awesome.
Pauline, oh, sorry, Tammy. Wanted Pauline to reveal herself as the genius behind the artworks. And say hi. Yay, thank you. You can see all the colorful stuff in the background too. That's great. It's tactile, it's sensory, it's colorful, it's everything. Tammy, you wanted to come in?
Oh no, I was just saying it's great. I don't think we have much time to comment on Pauline's map. I was going to say we could each make suggestions about what she could add, but I think we might be out of time a bit.
Yeah, looks like we out of time, but please, it would be great if everybody kept the conversation going. We have the recording of the session, we have the chat, and yeah, and that's all available on the Urban Festival website, including all the other previous sessions. Thank you so much, everybody. Such a privilege to be involved in this. So many clever ideas from a city practitioner point of view. I cannot ever split myself from that. This has just been amazing. And so many ideas we are committed to taking up in our practice, and some of that's already begun. Any other concluding comments, everybody?
I just wanted to say how much we're grateful to be amongst the other co-presenters, but also so many friends of ours are on this call. And I just think it's something that I think all of us feel that this is a collaboration of committed individuals and organizations and people who are trying to advance the rights of children in public spaces. And I think so many people who didn't even make a comment but who are watching are part of that journey. So from Play Africa's side, I think just want you to know, I'm seeing so many amazing humans on this call, and thank you.
Amazing humans, and we were up to 57 at some point and probably even more. Thanks, Phil. Thanks, everybody. I think we can close off.
Yeah,
One more thank you
so
much.
Just can I say just thanks to everyone. Thanks to Yasmin, Stephen, Heather, Gretchen, and Tandiwe, Pauline, everybody, for really an inspiring session. It's such a wonderful collection of organizations. And this does end the Urban Fest component of our workshop, but our workshop does continue, and we have 2 more sessions this afternoon. And so for those of you who can stay, it's the same link. And please do join us at 1 o'clock and continuing into the afternoon. Let me just share the program with you, and then please do go and grab something to eat and a cup of coffee. There's the program. You can see session 3, which is being convened by the head of Safer Cities program at UN Habitat, and session 4, which is convened by Stephanie Chetty, who's a really important official in government advocating the rights of children. We'd love to see you staying on. Thank you so much once again.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Yasmin.
Uh-uh.